This is another update to explain how to navigate Blackboard after I've received a few emails where there seems to be some confusion on how to access the weekly assignments. The first thing that I want to draw your attention to is when you enter into our Blackboard site, you should always start at the announcements page. I feel that some of you might not be getting my emails because you're using your personal email addresses that I do not have access to. When I send an email, I send email right here through Blackboard, and that means it goes to your UNO Gmail account. If you do not know how to access your UNO account, then I strongly suggest that you contact the Information Services Center so you can understand how to do that, because if you're not getting my emails, then that is going to cause some problems. So make sure that you have access to email. You also will notice that the emails I will start posting here in announcements. So you will have two forms of email. I will send them to your email and I will post them in the announcements section to make sure that you're always getting any correspondence that I'm sending out to the class. So first of all, let me just draw your attention to the email I sent out this morning. It was brought to my attention by a student who was using the online textbook that the online chapters were not matching what I had listed in the syllabus and in the modules. This was because our course was linked to the 8th edition textbook and it should be linked to the 9th most current edition textbook. When I talked to tech support this morning, I was told the only way to fix this issue is to have each of you individually call technical support because they need to unlink the account that you paid for from the 8th book and relink it to the correct 9th edition book. The technical support line is open 24/7. Below I have listed their number, and you will also need the incident number that I have highlighted so they can bring up the notes. Once your book is linked to the correct textbook, you will need to go through Blackboard to the My Communication Lab, and you will need to register with the new course ID, which I have listed below. And now the media share ID is the same as My Communication Lab. There's not two different ones like we were dealing with before, which obviously was also causing some confusion. So the My Lab will look exactly the same. It's just it needs to be connected to the 9th edition. And then that means you also need to log into the new media share that's linked to the new My Communication Lab. Okay? The only thing that you really need the chapters for are so one, you can read them so you know the content before our first exam, and two, there are two discussion board posts for there's a discussion board post for chapter 8 and chapter 9. So you obviously will want to review those chapters before you go in and answer those discussion board questions. And if I need to, I'm more than happy to give an extension on those discussion board questions this week. However, moving forward on your first informative speech will not be extended. You can still begin working on your first informative speech. You have some assignments that are due early this week, and so that is what I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to walk you through navigating the Module 2 for this second week, and I'm also going to discuss the assignments that are due early. The first thing I would like to draw your attention to is a document in the Syllabus tab. I mentioned this document a week ago, but I want to make sure that everybody knows to access it. Under the Syllabus tab, you will see a document called Course Module and Task Completion Tracking. I would strongly suggest that you pull up this document and either save it to your desktop or print it. You will see what this document does is it outlines all the assignments that you have and if you have anything due early. Week 1 is complete, so let's focus on Week 2, Course Module 2. The first learning unit discusses the first informative speech assignment. You need to read over the information in this learning unit before moving forward. Next, you'll read Chapter 2, presenting your first speech. You have no assignments and no discussion board connected to Chapter 2. You'll want to make sure that by Wednesday, May 27th at 11:45 p.m., you complete your first informative SPCI report. On Thursday, I will grade these, give you feedback so you can immediately begin on your outline. Next, you should read Chapter 13. You will notice there's no activity and there's no discussion board linked to this chapter. Next, you should read Chapter 8. You will notice that there's no activity because it is how to outline, so you should be working on your rough draft, and you do have a discussion board. Next, you should read Chapter 9. You will notice in assignments, there's no learning activity. However, you do have a discussion board where you will watch a sample introduction and conclusion and critique them. By Friday, May 29th, a rough draft outline of your speech is due. You will have needed to have looked over Chapter 8 and Chapter 9, or I have templates also added in Blackboard for you to access. So even if you don't have access to the chapter immediately, you have a template to use to complete this rough draft, and then I will give you feedback. The rough draft is not graded. However, if you do not give me a rough draft, I will take 5 points off of your speech grade. Next, you will read Chapter 12. Notice under assignments there are no activities related to Chapter 12. You simply need to be brainstorming what visual aids you will use for your first speech. Week 2, Course Module 2 ends on Sunday, May 31st at 11:45 p.m. Those of you finding your own audience and using MediaShare to record your speech will need to have your speech uploaded along with your final outline and note cards by Sunday, May 31st. Those of you that have contacted me and have chosen to do the live virtual class session, that will be taking place at 7 p.m. Central Time, which means your note cards and your final outline need to be ready and prepared by 7 p.m. Central Time. So that means any remaining learning activities and discussion board posts are also due at the end of the module. So that means the only thing you have due besides the speech, the final outline, and the note cards are the discussion board questions for Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. There were no other learning activities associated with this module, except for the SPCI for Speech 1, which is due early, and the rough draft, which is due early. If this is confusing, please let me know, but I am trying to make it as clear as possible. Every week, the only things that are due early is the SPCI report and a rough draft outline. Everything else is due at the end of the week on Sundays by 11:45 p.m. Let's close out of this module timeline and go into our weekly modules. Again, I'm going to focus on Module 2, Informative Speaking Part 1. First, you will notice what you see in the Modules tab is just an outline of what you will be covering. It shows you will go over your first informative speech. You will cover Chapter 2, Chapter 13, Chapter 8, Chapter 9, and Chapter 12. To enter into this module, you click the title. Once in the title of the module, you will see that it's divided into learning units. Maybe you want to think of them as folders. Each chapter has its own learning unit or folder, which holds the information that you need. The first learning unit, again, talks about the first informative speech assignment. To access in this folder, you click the title. And this is what you should see. You first want to read these directions. You want to understand what your first informative speech will be about. The next thing that you have is this learning activity, the specific purpose and central idea report. Down here in red, it shows you that SPCIs must be turned in no later than Wednesday, May 27th. To access this, you click the document. I would suggest saving it to your desktop. Open the document and begin filling out the form. You will save it. And then right here, you will browse your computer, you will attach the file that you saved on your desktop, and then you will click Submit. Once you're done with the learning activity for the first informative SPCI, you will wait until you get feedback from me on your topic. If your topic is approved and you're free to move forward, you will start on your rough draft. Please read this information. Read the assignment overview. Notice what is in red and in bold, that you need to be finished by Friday, May 29th at 11:45 p.m. No draft outline means a -5 points on your speech grade. There is a PDF document for you to access that talks about rules for outlining, followed with a template. Click on this document. Save it to your desktop. Open the document and begin typing a rough draft. This is exactly how I want your rough drafts to look. You can see that I have specifically outlined what your speech should look like. If you don't need some of these points, you simply delete them. Save this to your desktop. Attach the file by browsing your computer. Click Submit. Once you get feedback from me, you can begin your final draft. Your final draft is not due until the day of the speech. Here is a sample outline. It shows you that everything is written in complete sentence structure. It is very detailed. It is important for a speaker to write the speech out in complete sentence structure to help with your thought process, to make sure that your speech is fluid, and to make sure that it is chronological and that it makes sense from point to point, and that it is detailed enough for the audience to understand. You then take this outline and condense it into keywords, key reminders, so you can create note cards. You do not read directly from this document. This document is you writing the speech, then you practice that speech by using the note cards that you have created so you sound more conversational rather than reading. This is not due until Sunday, May 31st. Notice that that's red and that's bold. Again, you need to have note cards due with your speech by Sunday, the 31st at 11:45 p.m. They are worth 5 points of the speech grade. They're not an individual graded assignment. They are included in the 100 points of the speech grade. There's a sample note card, and then there's a note card template. Notice the sample note card is keywords, key phrases to help the speaker jog their memory during their delivery of the actual presentation. You may not actually look at these, or you may find them to be very useful, but this is a skill that we teach in the fundamentals course. The last thing in this module are simply important reminders. Once this is completed, we go back out to Module 2. You've looked through Learning Unit number 1. Now you move to number 2. Again, to access this actual folder, you click on this title. Noting, all you need to do for Chapter 2 is read. There are no assignments or discussions. So when you click in Unit 2 for Learning Unit Chapter 2, there's no assignments associated with this. Scrolling down, we look at Chapter 13. Again, you simply need to read. There are no activities or discussions. When you click in here, it just shows you the objectives over the chapter. However, when we get to Chapter 8, there's no learning activity, but there is a discussion. Again, you click on the title. It shows you on the left-hand side that you need to read over Chapter 8. Next, you have a second reading assignment. This is a PDF. You need to click on this PDF document and read these 9 rules for outlining. You also were shown these earlier in the first learning unit over the first informative. So it's just in there twice. Once you do your reading assignments, you can click on the class discussion. You click Launch to start. I highly suggest that you copy the question, paste them in a Word document, answer the question, and then submit it to the discussion board. I hope that this tutorial has helped show you how to navigate through the modules. If you have any questions, please let me know, and good luck as you work through the speech this week.